we are now coming to a different aspect of analytics, right? Because often these projects remain standalone or get lost without a proper kind of production execution plan. So what do you think of an analytics project to become ready to go into production? And what are the challenges you have faced in your industries or in your earlier workplaces where you have implemented some great analytics tools or great analytics project? So we can start with Gaurav if you are up for it.
Yeah, sure. See, I think let me just recap what we have been talking about. So, and the reason I need to do a bit of recap because that is linked to my answer also. So, I think Vinamra spoke about contextualization of information, right? So there has to be some sort of a context if you are working on analytics. So I think even the term analytics, if you ask me from industry view standpoint, it is loosely used. So this has become a bastard statement in a way, everybody's talking about analytics. So even reports and dashboards, those are also analytics. Insight is also kind of misused. So I don't understand, when you refer to analytics, what exactly it means. Because, again, that analytics itself is very contextualized. So back to Vinamra's point, and when we are talking from a journey where thing has been developed, a lot of companies are doing a lot of POCs, right? Now taking this POC or taking this toy model to production is another game in itself, right? What happened when you are, it's very similar, it's going back to first degree problem, you built a model in some sort of a control setup, right? When you hit the production, that control setup is not there. So that environment is very different. You end up facing all the kind of challenges what you have not thought of while you are playing around in a demo, POC, or kind of a build environment. So first thing first, your knowledge of data, what you think, the kind of the data, what you will get in production is very different from the actual data. Actual data is very ugly compared to what you're seeing on a POC or a demo environment. Right? Second problem is understanding of the data. So this is where I think Ratnakar and Deepak also spoke about, it's not about volumes of the data. If I have to put it as I don't care, it's a big data, small data, whatever data, it has to be a smart or connected data, right? And this is another fundamental problem people miss when they are taking things to production, it's a connected data. So we don't operate in a world of 10, 20 years back. I come from, so I've spent 24 years into industry, live and breathe data only, right? So earlier the problems were solved very linearly, right? You do this, load, extract, load, transfer, put it into the warehouse, you do your ETLs and, you consume reports and dashboards. So the problem was looked at very linearly. Now everything is interlinked. So this is where your graph kind of technology is also coming into picture because, we are not living in a linear world anymore. So the example I think the number spoke about, organizations are moving from data driven to data led. So they are making decision what data is telling them on OTT within 1 minute, right? So they have to make their AdWord change or their whole ad strategy change based on how it is happening. So these are some of the things. So going back, data doesn't look so pretty. It is not as sexy as how people think. It is ugly, right? Data is connected, right? So these are some of the data problems. Now let's come to when we are doing a deployment. So first thing is you are packaging a couple of things. One is data, second is the code. So the code, what you have thought, certain condition because you have tested the code in some sort of a very controlled environment on a test environment. In production, there are multiple systems which operate, right? There are legacy systems. There are systems which will, the ports are not open, they don't interact with each other. So you end up into a lot of technical issues. So this is where, how you have done your exception handling, instrumentation. If you have not done right level of instrumentation, it can work, well in your POC model, but the moment you put things into production, it will fail, and you'll be clueless how to fix it. So I think then there's a code or the technology issue. And the third bit, I think, which Ratnagar has already highlighted, that's the infrastructure part. So in your, again, toy environment, the infrastructure ask is very different. So I'll give you one practical use case. So I will not name a client, like, they have built analytical model, they were doing text mining, and then they were doing text analytics on top of it, doing a lot of resume parsing. They spin up multiple compute clusters. And in production, they thought, okay, for training, we'll use GPU. And they moved on to PyTorch, which is one of the technique they picked up on. And they were not able to interact across two nodes of PyTorch because the architecture is very different, right? Now, everything failed. So people who have built expertise on compute, how to handle computes, they didn't understand how the things same code will work when it is moved to GPUs. So, the point what I'm trying to make here is understand your underlying technology, right? So in production, you have to design things for production. Your dev is different, production is different. Things will be very different. Like, data won't be as pretty as it looks in your on your Excel sheets.
Right. Yes. So, yeah. Thanks, Gaurav. So yeah, Ritesh, you want to add on top of Gaurav what he mentioned?
Yes. So see, it's been 8 years that I've been working as a data scientist, and now I lead a team of data scientists. So I've actually started from scratch, where I was into consulting, where I was talking to the clients, understanding their problems. Yes. At times you identify a use case for your clients, then you discuss with them. So what I've seen is that normally your ML project doesn't to production. Either you have a lack of understanding of the business, okay, what exactly business wants and what you are doing, okay, that you are not in sync with your clients business and needs and understanding, okay. One is that, and second is obviously, let's say you have a very good understanding of the business, you have agreed on a particular project, then you also need to understand that you need to have sufficient resources to build an ML model. Now, not every problem can be solved by an ML model. Okay, like for example, Gaurav said, that there are a lot of companies, who tell that your reporting is in analytics, you perform a deep dive analysis, that is in analytics, right? So a lot of problems can be solved by that. Okay, so let's come back to ML problem which don't get into the production. Okay, so what I have seen is that whenever we identify a use case for an ML, we make sure that we have sufficient resources in terms of technology, in terms of data that we have on which we have to build any ML model. Okay, and then also we do an ROI analysis. Okay, so for example, I just cannot pick problem and make a model out of deploy it, right? Because a data scientist spends weeks on a particular project to train your model, to test your model, then you have to present it to your business team, and then obviously you have to automate for your scoring, right? So we do invest a lot of time, and your business has to also give you a green signal saying that that Ritesh, this is the type of solution which will help me. So whenever we identify a use case or a particular client or a business, it comes to us saying that this is the problem I'm facing, we always make sure that we have a thorough understanding of the business. We try to relate that with data also. And then we do some sort of ROI analysis that, that you will be doing some sort of campaign on these data points, on these subscribers or customers. What are the chances that how many customers you will get? What is the organic growth that you are getting? If you're deploying a particular model, you will be using AWS services for building a model, for scoring a model. You will be spending money over there, right? And data scientists are not that. Right. So the idea is to understand the problem better, do some sort of ROI analysis, okay, and then present it to the business, be in sync with their understanding, and then you take that problem ahead. Okay. Yeah, at times what we have felt is that that we have been given a problem, and with time the business has changed his or her mind. So that is a different problem altogether. You don't have much control over there, right? For example, a business been dropped completely. So you don't have control over there. The things where you feel that you should do some sort of analysis before you pick any particular project, it is absolutely necessary. And you are right, there are a lot of courses which I have also done, be it on Analytics Vidya or LinkedIn Learning or Coursera. They don't really talk about data pre-processing or how to create the right variables. I have seen that, a lot of fresh recruits which we pick from good B schools, we see that, in college also, they are mostly talked about these are the 10 independent variables and this is one independent variable. This is how you have to run the code. So this is not how it works. You need to have some thorough understanding of the business. We spend a lot of time with the business understanding what is going on. In fact, at Trailblazing, your analytics team has to do a market visit, because not everything which is there in customer's mind, okay, or what he or she is doing with your linear TV or with your mobile app is not being captured in the data, right? We do a lot of customers visit. We try to understand their problems. Then we actually come back and see what cues are there in the data which will help me in understanding their behavior or capture their behavior. Okay, so yeah, you need to have a thorough understanding of the business. Also, maybe there is a process that you need to follow for building an ML model. Normally, online courses don't really talk about that. Okay, so I guess. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So I feel that just being a data scientist, that doesn't mean that you have to be very good in Python, SQL, PySpark, or let's say R programming. To have a very good understanding of the business, so be able to build a great solution, not just a good solution. Yeah.
So Ritesh, I just add one point, what Ritesh is talking about, and sorry Satyajit, I'm picking up on you. He gave one example, here's my 400 gig hard drive, find insights for me. We end up talking to customers like this. Here, कुछ तो कर दो data से, and build some analytics on top of it, right? So what is the definition of कुछ तो कर दो? I think that's the point which Ritesh is also making, that context of problem statement has to be very clear, because कुछ तो कर दो कहीं नहीं जाएगा.
In fact, at times business comes to us saying, Ritesh, I want to do this, tell me how can I do this? So they are not very clear what is the objective which they have in their mind and how they want to drive this. Okay, so we spend a lot of time in brainstorming the objective. Okay, we then finalize something. Okay, this is what you need, and then we go back to our team, we discuss internally, and then we actually come back with a solution. That so this is how it is to be done. Okay, and then we agree on the solution and the deployment part.
Okay. So I'll go to Vinamra. I saw your hand raised. So you want to add something here?
Yeah, just two quick points. I think from the campus and the entry stage perspective, I think for the benefit of a student, nobody is expecting you to have a domain knowledge, right? And nobody is even expecting you probably to have a deep expertise on lot of tools and techniques. So what we are expecting to have an interest in, that's all we are expecting, and to show some competence in some of the coding language. Now, where these courses will help, that was the point, right? So if somebody mid-career trying to pivot, taking that risk to pivot their career from, let's say quality assurance to data analytics, for an example, right? Or maybe from an HR to HR analytics, because that will just come up and they already have the domain experience, right? So those folks, when they're testing the water, these trainings and tools will really help them to see if that's where their heart lies. Obviously that's where there's a torch bearing role and you feel that you want to pivot there. But sometimes when you test the waters through these courses, you do need to understand, then you come to a realization whether you definitely will be motivated in that role, right? Before actually pivoting or getting, taking the risk of pivoting. Yeah? So I think that's where these courses are phenomenal. I think it depends on who is taking that course at what point in time, right, in their career. And I just wanted to leave that objective in mind as well. Yeah.
Sure. Yes, Deepak, you want to add something?
Sorry, I think this topic has become like a debate. I just want to say, full credit to the Unacademies of the world who kind of, put up these courses, etc. having said that, it's the marketing behind these brands which is driving the need of it, right? Truly, there might not be a need to take so many of these courses, but the marketing is so strong, and I'm like wondering how have we become slaves of some of these marketing gimmicks. I have a personal anecdote. I have a friend who just retired from the Indian Army. He's kind of retired as a major, and then he was looking for a corporate career. He said, "Look, I've done all the courses available online. I want to do something in analytics." I said, "Wow." I was thinking the college freshers who get bitten by the bug, but it is every year in the world that people are getting bug of doing courses and learning everything. So yeah, so I think I would agree completely with Vinamra. You need to be able to figure out when do you need this and how will these help you, then randomly picking everything which is available online.
Great. Yeah, so great points. Yeah, so we are kind of in a debate mode, but we learned something, and I hope the attendees also learned something. So now we'll be moving on to our second part of our discussion. So this pandemic, this COVID-19, which has impacted almost all of our lives. So how this pandemic have changed the business strategies in India? Because we as a human being are still fighting COVID, right? With analytics and everything. We have technologies for pharma is there, medical industry is there, hospital industry is there. So everyone is fighting it. But what about the businesses? So how analytics is helping businesses to survive COVID-19? And so now I will start with Gaurav. Maybe Gaurav, if you are up for it, so we'll start with Gaurav and Ritesh and Deepak. So Gaurav, you can start. Then we'll be moving on to Ritesh and Deepak. Yeah.
So with COVID-19, I think Vinamra should be very happy because OTT has picked up and, he's making big bucks with his employer. So,
right.
So what has happened with pandemic, I think there's a huge adoption. So earlier, you used to convince people. So I'll give you one example from healthcare, right? Healthcare are notorious. So even if you look at patient management application, they are outdated, they are ancient, they are old, 20 years ago, whatever has been created, that's what they have been using. So 3 years back, if you were talking to a doctor, talking to a hospital and explaining them why they should have the data strategy, why they should get into building some sort of analytics, that is not something people were listening to it. What pandemic has done, it has increased that adoption. Every doctor is on Facebook, Twitter, so they understand, right? So they are managing their own digital identity and they understand what digital brings to them from an organization, from a business standpoint, right? So what pandemic has done, it's a cliche, but I'll still say it. Everybody now is in the business of data or technology, right? So we have seen supply chain crashing down. So now a lot of talks are done where I'm biased also. I'm just making it a statement on a public forum. I'm very biased about data. I think data will be the future supply chain, right? So, it won't be the physical assets which will be getting exchanged. So we are talking about now data exchanges, right? Where companies are sharing their data across their ecosystem, whether it is within the trust or whether it is outside the trust network. So this is where blockchain enabled technologies like data exchanges are also coming into play. From a student standpoint, if they want to look up something look up DevX, look up Ocean Protocol. If you really want to look at what India is doing on that front, Beacon Protocol, on which ONDC and all these are based, I think look at those. This is where what pandemic has done and the way the future of the business is evolving is very different from what it was 2 years ago. So it is more now network based, more connected economy, what we are talking about. We are not looking at things which are in silo, solve for this problem. Second thing, what pandemic has done, it has killed few of the industries. I'll give you one example so as to contextualize things. For example, ATM, right? ATM industry, it is going to die in another 4, 5 years or 6 years, right? People will not go to cash machine to dispense cash, right? Now, majority of the payments are happening through digital formats. So, but PTMs are sitting on wealth of data. How they can leverage that data, create something which is more get into exchange where it is more like a edtech, fintech kind of initiative. So now companies are looking at data from a data monetization standpoint. They are looking at how they can create multiple revenue streams because they are sitting on wealth of data. So there are a lot of new business opportunity, if I have to say. There's increasing adoption, what pandemic has brought. So I'll shut up now.
Okay. Okay. Moving on to Ritesh, you want to add on what Gaurav mentioned?
Yes, absolutely. So what I have seen in the last 3 years is that, pandemic has obviously led to a lot of digitization. Okay. And now we are able to collect much more data about the customer than we were collecting before. Okay. So for example, I work for Tata Play and we are into DTH business, right? So we do have our mobile app where you can watch your TV, right? And do a lot of other things. So now what we saw is that before pandemic and after pandemic, the usage of mobile app, the people watching content on mobile app has gone up like anything. So we now know a lot more about customers than before. We are able to create personalized products, personalized journeys for the subscribers who are using our mobile app. Obviously, you don't have any clue about customers who are not using your mobile app, but obviously a good percentage of subscribers are using mobile app. So we now know a lot more about them. So first is that, and second is banking. I got in. So before getting into DTH, I was with banking industry. And in fact, I was working for an NBFC and I started their operations, okay. And I was taking care of analytics over there. And the pandemic hit in the last week of March. Now, none of our sales people were able to move out to get customers, right? Visit their houses to take documents. So that is when your analytics came into the picture. We actually rolled out the approved offers for our customers. So we have their internal data, we have their bureau data, right, from CIBIL and other bureau institutes. We collected those data, we built a model, and then we rolled out offers to them, giving them the ROI and the offers were also quite personalized. What is your income? Then what is your current loans? What should be the amount we should be giving to you, right? And at what ROI, what would be the tenure, etc. So these are the 2 use cases which I see, that the pandemic has changed a lot. Obviously, a lot of digitization has happened in healthcare as well. Okay. Yeah. That is what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Ritesh. So over to Deepak.
Yeah, I think this is, it's been a huge learning to begin with, right? So pandemic probably has changed a lot of business strategies as well, right? We all know there were a bunch of industries which were negatively hit, right? We talked about travel, tourism, manufacturing, real estate, big time, because I was a part of that industry then. Suddenly people said, you know what, we don't need so many offices, we don't need housekeeping, we don't need property management. So there were companies which are out of business overnight with this whole thing, right? And which meant that if they have to still survive and, even after, letting go of many people, then what is that they should be doing, right? And we saw similarly, when there's a down, there's an up as well. We saw industries like e-commerce, which kind of gained, pharma, thing like e-pharmacy, telemedicine kind of picked up, digital payments went up, Paytm went up 99% in their growth in 1 year, right? EdTech companies, logistics, software companies, of course, they made a lot of money and, they kind of grew as a business. And we also saw that, a lot of people mentioned here on the call, even Ritesh just mentioned that, data-driven and technology-enabled business became the new norm, right? You no longer have the luxury of having people to run around and do your jobs. Supply chains got revamped. They were big time hit with the pandemic, right? Now, which means that I can no longer have the luxury of just-in-time inventory. Earlier the model was, okay, I will save up capital, I will order, and I'll get my goods coming in for the production line. That has changed, right? Supply chains are kind of revamping now. Operational cost management is tightening. Marketing expenditure is coming down drastically. Businesses are now wondering, okay, how do I get a customer to lose their or spend their money? Because consumers are saying, okay, if it is not a necessity, I'm not going to buy it, right? So you have to then look at, okay, how do I make them spend more? There is a fierce, people working fiercely as a bunch to kind of have a robust BCRP, right? When I have to still survive and work, what do I do? They're building fungibility in the resources. You no longer need specialists, but you need a guy who can do, let's say, more than 2 jobs to survive, right, in the organization. So you're looking at more people who can deliver more. Similarly, I have also seen that business models are changing. You were probably doing corporate strategic planning for 5 years, 7 years down the line. Now you're saying, okay, let me do scenario planning. What will happen 6 months, 12 months down the line? How will I deliver what I need to deliver? Right? That is kind of becoming the norm. Huge investments you've seen on digital transformation, automation, AI. Where people want to be connected with their customers, with their employees. There are CHROs across the world who are looking at building hybrid as their models to be able to attract talent and retain. I think this is a joke I always tell to my friends and colleagues. Google's USP was come work in my swanky office, and I'll take care of all your needs. And in the pandemic, our offices were lying vacant, right?
Yes,
Probably there
yes.
was a big thing. Okay, now that was like a USP to attract talent, and that's kind of gone down, the drain. So yeah, so I think a lot of things have changed, and a lot of businesses have to adopt and change with new strategy to survive.
Right.
Pandemic has been a learning for everybody, including myself, and I think a lot of good has come out of it. So I'm hoping that now we'll see a paradigm shift in terms of how people do business in various countries.
Right, great. So taking a cue from Deepak's point and Ritesh and what Gaurav has discussed. So when we are investing to analytics, that is okay. But what about the small businesses? Because they are not established enough to opt for a single streamlined business intelligence solution like the larger companies. So how analytics help them to survive during pandemic? And we can start with Ratnakar if you are there, if you are up for it. So how do you think this analytics has helped the small businesses during the pandemic?
Yeah, let me try to switch on my video for a minute. I hope you can
sure.
see me and my
Yes,
voice is clear as well.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm taking it on a mobile device. So if I see any internet disruption, I'll just switch it off, right? So that's a great question. I mean, it's given that a bigger company like Google, Facebook, and other tech companies of the world can definitely weather that storm. But how would a small company really learn their lessons and try to keep their head above the water, right? So I think one of the core things which every business has learned is how to minimize the overhead. Where exactly is the extra fat that you can cut off, and this not going to impact your business operations, right? And the second thing which the successful companies have learned is the customer backwards mental model, right? So you should not think about that this is what really is required by the employees, this is what is required by the organization to really work and create that environment, but what is it that my customer really requires, right? And just thinking from that customer-centric point of view has brought in the value, right? And as the overheads have come down because of the cost savings in terms of the real estates and some of the other things, you can pass on the benefits to the customer. You can customize your products and services which are more in tune with what the customer really requires and wants, right? So some of those things have really come in, and some of the businesses have done a tremendous job in terms of getting closer to their customer, understanding their needs and wants in a much better way, right? And I think another thing that has come out from this and which is also relevant for the small businesses is the customization. So gone are the days when we think about that, this is a product and service I'm offering for this segment, right? So the segment mentality has gone out, and it's more about the customer size of one. How can we customize our things? Because I have the data, I have a much more comprehensive view based on the apps that they have installed, based on the permissions that you've gotten from the customers. You can understand much more about their geolocation, much more about their usage pattern and all of those things, right? So anyone who has an app, anyone who has a presence on somebody's mobile phone can really do the analytics on that. So really a lot of data which has come out with the whole digitization, whole customer-centric mental model, and getting closer to the, trying to cut the overhead and focus on what is really required for the business.
So yeah, thanks Ratnakar. Thanks for switching on the video, because we'd love to see you. And yeah, thanks for the insights you shared with us. So I'll come to Binamra. So what's your take on this?
I don't think I have a lot of points to add on top of what has been already shared. Right?
Yes.
But taking just a side note of it, like the COVID will also, I'm talking I'm taking an organizational view now, right? So COVID will also change how you will perceive. So we're talking about data democracy. The data as an asset, if it is available to everyone, then everyone should have the ability to comprehend, right, and take insights out of it. So the data literacy will also become very, very pivotal, right? Because you can take decisions which are, you can misread the data and also take, because it's very technical in that sense. So let's say you're tracking something and it goes by some name, and you misinterpret the name and you take another decision. It must have happened all the time. I can't take a particular example right now, but it happens all the time, right? So data literacy is very important, which means that one of the inputs of the heads of the data departments is also to educate the larger enterprise on the MVPs of data and how they will use the data. That is one organizational input. The second organizational input is, as the CDOs kind of bake in their role from 2014 to maybe 2019-20, they will settle in their roles, and then the next phase of evolution in a CDO and a data organization role will be, they will set up data center of excellences, right? Working closely with the data experts on each of the verticals outside of the data center of excellence, such as, let's say, a sales team, few analysts working with the sales team, few analysts working with the business team or the marketing team, so as to ensure that data literacy circle revolves and data is created as an asset. The third will also be what we talked about, data marts, etc. Data as a product, right? Data as an asset, data center as a value driver versus just a revenue or a cost kind of a calculator. So not like a cost center, but a value center, and data officer as a PNL, profit and loss holder of that center, right? That's how the roles will evolve, right? And they will find a place in the board as well, like going forward. So the expectation will increase, enhance as we look forward to these data roles, predominantly due to COVID, because and the inflation scenario, right? So the investments will be challenged, right? Much of the data product will have a gestation and cycle, so it will translate into minimum viable product, how we can yield result in short times, right? Multiple skills will evolve, so data science is not good enough. You would have to know a bit of MLOps. MLOps needs to know some bit of data science. Data scientist and MLOps need to know some bit of data engineering, right? To ensure that the things work in production, right? Which means that it will work in squads or pods or whatever you call it, with the confluence of a business stakeholder, a product stakeholder, a tech stakeholder, and a data stakeholder with the functionalities, so that you are building an MVP which is aligned to the business outcome and limiting the gestation cycle. So these changes will come pretty quickly, both because of COVID and also because of the inflation in the cost that will kick in the product.
Great. Thanks, Vinamra, for your comments. So I'll come to Satyajit. So where we started, we are about to close the loop. So Satyajit, so far we have discussed about the contextualization, right? We have discussed about the journey of the data, as well as our journey from analytics, from doing a simple regression, maybe simple ANOVA also you can say, and moving into the world of deep learning, NLP, transformers, right? And then we talked about the democratization, right, of the data, the analytics, right, both of them. Then we have talked about the connectedness of the data in terms of, the tools, technologies we are using. We have also talked about the, how to build a career where we should focus on, right? So the career focus for the people who want to, get into the data science or data analytics field. And then, of course, we have, got a point from Deepak where he mentioned the custom-based solutions for whatever problems you have, right? We are not going to sell you a bigger solution. We are going to build a solution for you, and that's going to be your business specific. So what's your take on all this? Where are we moving? So, let's say 10 years down the line. So if we again have this conversation again in the 10th year anniversary version of the analytics conclave. So where do you see, what are the points you are going to discuss after 10 years? So that's a futuristic view, I know, but I want to know from you and all other panel members. So I'll start with you. So what's the futuristic view here? Where are we moving? Yes, so Satyajit, you are on mute. So could you please unmute yourself? Yeah.
Sorry, very pertinent question that where do we go now from here, and how do we see 10 years down the line? Now, two threads that we discussed. One was on analytics evolution over a period of time, last 10 years, and one is COVID. pandemic. What impact did it have? Now, if you look at pandemic, what it is uncertainty. And if you look at the spikes of uncertainty are increasing day by day. If you there are uncertain events, if you monitor uncertain events in India, the number of uncertain events at a daily level has gone up significantly. So whether it is pandemic, which is one in so many years, whether it is environmental change, whether it is climate change, whether it is geopolitical situations that drives this. So obviously, one thing is very clear, that organizations needs to be ready for experimentation. I think we were very, very happy sitting down and working on a steady state. Okay. We were very happy that customers will be there, demand will be there, products will be there, movement will be there, logistics will be operational free, plant operations will run fine, raw materials are assured, and we are in a happy world. That is changing. That is a reality going forward. If you are not in the regime of continuous experimentation that will enable you to sense and respond positively to various situations that you will experience, I think that is the strategic change that will happen in organizations, and we are seeing it. We are seeing it. I work across EMEA and Asia Pacific, so I know that this has seeped into the people with the pandemic's severity of impact, I would say, and they now realize that. The principle of creating value and developing a competitive advantage will never change. Still there is a going on concern and not a gone concern principle. This creating value and having competitive advantage will be there. And organizations, whether it is, supply chain or geopolitical shift on fashion apparel or a food startup or banking or insurance or digital version of it, everybody has seen fundamental business changes. Simple credit card and travel points, no more meaning. It became not meaningful, to many people because travel was gone, from the overall places. Plant operations. Can you imagine a plant running without, engineers coming to the field, without inspection team, without reliability team, without maintenance team? That is what it is. Now I will extend it further. Can you imagine an organization without data scientists, without data engineers? Would you be willing to do that? I mean, that is sometimes will be required. So the point that I'm trying to make is that organizations need to look at a system level, to understand that system level, holistic view, modular setups of this, and the way it is, these modules get impacted and disruptions needs to be responded to. That ability of an organization to do that will be critical. And the ability of the organization to execute these strategies will be only empowered by analytical automation. Without that, you cannot drive. Can you imagine a supply chain planning? Can you imagine COVID management without data? The countries that have managed, like India, like, Europe, like any country, the fundamental thing that three things I said: data was critical, data management was critical, real-time data management was critical, spatial analysis, micromanagement. You talk about any decision that was taken was totally driven by data, including models. Although models, I had a very different view on the SIR and SPUR models that people very, enthusiastically came out with and faltered on the accuracy part. But anyway, that is the way that you would need to look at it. So combining the importance of value of analytics that will be delivered, combining the need of this agility that you need to bring on your strategic decision across the value chain, and you have to view it across the value chain. That is extremely important. This will play a greater role going forward. And many things that we are seeing, today, some changes as far as business strategy is concerned, because some changes may not be permanent. Consumer behavior in certain sectors may be permanent, may not be permanent either. Some are temporary, because permanency again has a time horizon, right? Depending upon what we are seeing, we are taking a call whether it's permanent or not. But if you extend it further 5 years may not be permanent. Consumer may bounce back to the same behavior. We may see consumers bored out of digital, marketing, consuming digitally. They would like to go physically and go around. Now there is an urge, for us to move out of Teams, move out of WhatsApps, and going back to your friends and have that physical, so maybe there could be a change like that. Maybe we will go back to the physical world, but that doesn't mean that there won't be uncertainties in life. So as a thought from my side, I think many things will change permanently, many things may not, but organizations need to have an ability to respond positively, and that ability will come from analytics and cutting across value chain. This needs to be understood. Now, one point I want to make here is as a carrier for people who are looking at this. And one point that I think Vinamra mentioned that also, we see a fundamental gap, at least I see in organizations, that there are data scientists and there are businesses. Businesses do not understand how data science will play a role in this organization. If you ask a problem statement for a guy who is 20 years without data scientist, he will not appreciate what you are trying to bring to the table. And a data scientist who is far away from, having those experiences and all, he will always be saying, give me variables, give me target variable, I'll model. But it is not about a target variable always. In uncertainty scenario planning, you will not have a target. It is unsupervised learning that will become more and more critical than supervised learning for you, because, you will not have a target. That is one thing that needs to be understood. And for people, I would not agree with Vinamra that you should have simple appreciation of business or simple appreciation of data sciences. You should have fundamental appreciation of business. Very critical perspectives of business you should develop as a management student, because this is important. Across the value chain, you need to have that. You need to have the right perspectives of analytics, and you should be, as a career or as an aspiration, you should be driving organization strategy going forward, blending this two poles, right, on business and analytics. That is where management students needs to see themselves, and this is where I feel the gap will be addressed. And obviously, technology. What I would say is that distributed governance will become very, very critical. And the thing that is important is that I asked if data science leave. Actually speaking, there was an experience that we had. Some 40 models were built by the organization data science team. And they found that during the pandemic, these all accuracies and all went for a toss. But when they wanted to go back and audit it and find out what has gone into, who has built it, what model, what variables, they could not trace the model's life cycle completely. So it is extremely important that if you, all these digital modernization analytics intervention with new techniques and algorithms coming into play will have a serious review probably 3 years, 5 years down the line, because people will go for that delta efficiency improvement, delta accuracy improvement. And always, like technology modernization, this analytical algorithm modernization will happen. Now, at that point of time, you need to look at this model life cycle, the entire life cycle, from data to decisioning, what model, when. Now, that part needs to be covered up as a part of MLOps, and we need to see that very, very in a governed way that is rolled out across organization, and this is critical.
So great insights. So thank you, Satyajit. So I just keep the forum open for anyone else to want to add any other points before you open the Q&A for the question and answers of the audience. Gaurav, you want to add a point?
Yeah, just want to put it on a lighter context. If 10 years from now, if Elon Musk is still there, we'll be having this conference on Mars. If Mark will be there, it will be on Metaverse. And the way we are talking about connected economy, I think digital cloning will be a big thing. So there will be a convergence of digital and your physical asset. So people can look at their factory from some control center. 10 years from now, if you ask me, I think to the point what Deepak made, even on my personal level, I'm not talking about my organization, at my personal level, there will be a revenue line which which will be coming out of my own data monetization. So the data which I am generating, so I will have my income line, other than my salary if I'm employed, other than my salary, there will be an income line coming out of my own data monetization stream. So these are the 4 things at least I am seeing 10 years from now.
Great insights. Vinamra, Deepak, if you want to add any point, Ratnakar, Ritesh. Yeah, good, Deepak, good, okay, fine. Vinamra, yes.
No, I think I resonate with the last point Gaurav mentioned. Both last 2 points. One is the confluence of convergence of digital and physical. That is the reality we will tend to. And the second one, data teams will be profit and loss centers, right? CDOs will own P&Ls, right? And they will be forced to own P&Ls pretty soon. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Great. Okay, so I think Ratnakar and Ritesh, if you want to add anything, or I think we will start the Q&A.
I mean, without taking much more time, I'll just say probably, as the data scientist, we would need to focus much more on the ROI, the impact articulation as we mature, right? And then also showcasing the like the ease of interpretation as well. So it shouldn't be very, very difficult for our stakeholders to interpret and apply themselves.
Right. Okay. Great. Okay. So yeah, Ritesh, you want to add?
Yeah.
You want to add the concluding remarks? Yeah, please.
All the points are covered.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. So we have just opened the Q&A for the attendees. So you can post on your any questions, any queries you have for our panelists, the eminent panelist group here. So I can see already few questions put up here. So one question by Ansita. So analytics definitely help marketers to understand customer needs, but does analytics also understand customer sentiments? So I think we answered it through the sentiment analysis. At some point of time we were discussing on the sentiment analysis. So Vinamra, if you want to add maybe 1 or 2 lines here to Ansita.
I think Deepak said touch based on that in the discussion pretty elaborately, right? I'd like him to.
Yes.
So I think, so sentiment analysis has been there for a while, right? So I think it is important because customers buy from customers, so it is important to know that what is that they feel. Let's say even if you're giving a 5-star rating to a product on a website, what is that you really want to say? Is the product, let's say you bought a laptop, is it good, not good? Are you using sarcasm and saying, by the way, everything is good, but the keyboard is excellent, which means the keyboard could malfunction, right? So companies are definitely interested in knowing what are people talking about my product, because people talk from people. So there are enough and more tools and technology available to capture this data in many forms. Let's say from the web form, from your emails, from your chat logs, right? From websites, and kind of all of these are amalgamated together to bring out the voice of customer analytics. And that is kind of then used to improve the product and the overall processes to impact a positive customer experience. So so a lot of work has been done in that space, and it continues to be in the center of things to drive more efficiencies.
Yes. So I guess
I can add a bit of journey.
Please.
I would like to add one point on my journey with Z5 as well, or maybe from the support journeys as Amex. So from starting with a deep-seated support journey at Amex to presenting the journey more in face and chat and in the face and available on the landing page, right? For the customers, that entire journey of mitigating the cost at the same time addressing customer need, right? That was done over iterations of 2 years or 2.5 years, right? Essentially, when you're saying you're reading the customer mind, you are in parallel building processes. So at Z5, now we are among the best rated apps in India on Android and iOS as I speak today. We have gone through that journey of about close to 3 years now, right? Building processes in the background while we know the customer feedback, right? So it's an adaptation and journey. And from 3 angles, right? You have an awareness survey, right? Where you know the brand and whether people know the brand and they want to come, right? And second set of data inputs is obviously this digital tracking that you do, the moment of truth and touch points. The third is obviously the feedback left behind through 3 sources: one, direct search and customer complaints, etc. That is a pivotal touch point. Then obviously there is an app review touch point, and third is loosely speaking voice of customer, reaching out to the customer for focus interviews and etc. Right? So we have like very rich data to literally understand what the customer feels and needs and feels about both our product and in our case our content, etc. But I think it's an evolution. We have to build a baseline of proper tech to address those needs over time.
So I can see Satyajit and Ritesh raise their hands. So Satyajit, do you want to add something here?
Yeah, I just wanted to add
Yeah.
that sentiment analysis also needs to be looked at from the approach point of view and the technique point of view, right? Obviously, it has been there for quite a long time, but the techniques and the approaches are changing based on the context and the problems or insights that you want to generate. So if you're looking at sentiment analysis, then I would say that you should build up a structure of this on your own perspective, how a subjectivity classification is there, or how a sentiment classification you need to do, or how opinion detection needs to be looked at. So there are various categories of sentiments that, and then there are techniques, whether it is a deep learning technique or a traditional machine learning technique or unsupervised modeling will be required. So these, if you are able to understand across, keep the businesses or the functions, organization functions in central, it would help you a lot to get a perspective on that and see how this will shape up going forward, because it is changing. The way knowledge discovery is happening, this sentiment analysis part is also changing quite significantly, according to me.
Ritesh, you want to add something? Whatever we discussed
so
so far.
Yes, so NLP just doesn't help you in your product or your services, how people are talking about it, but it has also helped a lot in developing a new product altogether. So for example, Flipkart, when it launched its in-house product for earphones, chargers and all, right? So it had millions of reviews about brands like JBL, Sennheiser or SCIKIQ, right? So it's a very, very classic case study on product based on the sentiments what people are talking about other brands, right? So they tried launching their in-house product by making sure that they are able to address all those problems which they are facing in other brands. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next problem, because we have talked so much about the democratization. So one question is what are the best strategies to democratize data science in an organization? So this is a nice question, I guess. So what could be the best strategies? Yes, Deepak.
Yeah, I think one is creating awareness, right? While we have evolved as organizations, there are still pockets where we haven't penetrated well enough. So I think I personally feel that if it starts from the top, right, when people start appreciating the value data brings to a table, and then how it should be used to take decision, everything else kind of follows. Having said that, I think what also works is show and tell, right? You're able to do something with data and present a business case saying that I had problem X, I have kind of solved that, and I've impacted it by X percentage, whether it is the bottom line, which is the revenue, which is sales, which is whatever metric that you pick up to solve for, and then kind of sets the context and brings confidence in saying yes, we should invest in this area because something we were not able to solve historically, now we are able to kind of build a repetitive technology or repetitive technique using technology to be able to give me results. I would take a simple example as forecasting, right? How was it done earlier versus how is it done now, right? There's a sea change, and that's because of analytics and data techniques. Then when you say democratization, means everybody should be in the organization looking at to be able to use this data. So I think time and again, if you have more cases like these which are explained, showcased, talked about at all levels, I think it grows the organization to start following that approach.
Yes, Satyajit. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there are many ways to do that, but what succeeds, I feel, is to have a top-down approach with a construct of analytics board kind of a stuff. There is an analytics advisory board that we always recommend to organizations to establish. And obviously, if you have a good chief analytics or chief digital officer that has analytics driven value proposition based KPIs. That is definitely going to help you to bring folks together, because there are a lot of issues on custodian of data. When you have IT, OT systems in place, there are a lot of political debates around it and power struggles, almost a power struggle, I see. And secondly, that you need to build up a service-based architecture, because if one thing I borrow from Deepak, if you show and tell, and if the business guys, lap it up, and everybody wants to do that, and you do not have an infrastructure readiness to deliver it, then it becomes a it becomes a reverse impact happens, that you need to be a bit ready, and then probably stretch it up. Show and tell is always there, because unless business sees it, they will not take it, or they will not embed it into their decision making process. So that's important. And the other thing is that the data democracy, I feel that goes a long way in bridging the gaps between that, because there are many data points that are there, and which are lying in Excel still till today, and many data points which a business does it lies in Excel in their desktops. So that practice needs to be moved out. And also, when we are doing scenario planning, getting into the future, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years down the line, estimates of the future, that is the variables that drive your business, those estimates, information needs to be properly captured and stored, and because these are explanatory variables of your business, or hypothetically they are explanatory variables, there has to be a conscious mechanism of sourcing this from multiple sources, because scenario going forward is all scenario pathways. Like climate change pathways, you will have these pathways to be, experimented, and you need to know what is the best response to be done. So unless and until you create this structure from the data democracy to the board, I think analytics becomes a bit of a challenge and a bit of an issue. People do that in a scale which is very, very comfortable to them, but need not necessarily be at what pace the business needs it. Because today you cannot have the luxury of waiting for 6 months, 1 year to build a model. If I was in an organization which has 25,000 time series. Now, if I give to a person build models for 25,000 time series accurately with a 98% accuracy, that person will be going on modeling for the lifetime, but he will never able to come out of it alive. So when you are looking at those kind of scale, which needs to be driving a logistics, in and out at a daily level, what organizations are expecting from you as an individual, how you want to build a process, how you want to deliver a model. So therefore, it is important to see that this transformation line is very, very clear from data to board, is very, very clear, and that is critical to an organization to push them to an experimentation mode. Parallelly to what is moving on steady state, it is fine, but the two bimodal operation of organizations will increase day by day.
So Ritesh, you want to add a point here? Ritesh, you are on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah. So I completely agree with Deepak and Satyajit that it has to be a top management driven approach. Okay, I still remember my last stint with Access, where I was picked when they didn't even start their operations, right? So he was so far-sighted that, Ritesh, I want you to help me even identify the attributes that you want me to capture from customers. He wanted me to design his application form for all the loans. Okay, he was that far-sighted. So we do a lot of training sessions with the business people. We make them understand the data. We show them how we are harnessing value out of the data. Okay, because at times, for example, if we are trying to engage with a new business, okay, we show them about the use cases that we have done with the other business verticals. We show them how we have derived value, how it is helping us in generating more revenue or reducing churn, etc. So we do a lot of sessions. So those are not sort of technical sessions, I would say. Those are sort of a theoretical session. We make them understand this is data, this is how we look at it. You can also, we have a lot of internal tools like Tableau and all, where you can just, drag and drop and analyze the data. At times they actually come back to us, after session saying that this is what I've identified, and we do something around it. So you need to make sure that your business team is in sync with you when it comes to building solutions and understanding data, etc. Yeah.
Thank you. So coming to the next question, how to mitigate with the biasness involved in data to improve its quality for better reliability of insights produced? So Gaurav, if you want to address this question.
Sorry, how to improve the bias? Sorry.
How to mitigate with the biasness involved in data to improve its quality for better reliability of insights produced?
Yeah, see, first of all, I'll give a first principle answer. So first of all, you need to identify what are the different sources of biasness, right? The sources of biasness can be, what I spoke about earlier, can be you conducted some sort of a POC or a demo or a show and tell session, and you picked up certain data points, right? So your selection can be a bias itself, right? Then, as a modeler or as somebody who has put that model in place, right, there are self biases, with that person who's modeling, because that person is thinking about certain assumptions. I think what I have seen from my experience, I'll give you a very practical example. See, what is model? First of all, model is what we believe how the reality looks like, right? So it's a manifestation of a reality, right? So it is not real. It is what we are trying to model. So which means we are thinking of a reality in a certain way. So we are making certain assumptions. This is how the reality should be, right? So what I've seen, people doesn't capture those assumptions, right? So now you need to first thing, you capture those assumptions to take the biases out, and at each and every step, you need to make sure those assumptions still hold true or doesn't hold true, right? And because just calling out assumption doesn't work. So now testing those assumptions is what needs to happen, right? So that's the first step. Second is, this model needs to operate within certain boundary conditions. These are all bounded models, right? Now, when the model needs to operate within a boundary condition, what are the constraints? So we spoke about assumption. Now we need to understand what are the constraints which are there. So the constraint can be I know the quality of the data is not right? If I'm building a model which is ignoring the quality of the data, right? Or if I'm building a model which is ignoring the kind of the infrastructure which I'll be getting, or if I'm building a model which is ignoring other constraint, which is the reality, right? Then whatever I'll build is of no use, right? So for me, list down your assumption, test your assumption at each and every step, define your constraint, because end of the day, this need to be a bounded model. So what are my boundary condition? Keep testing your boundary condition, and don't assume. Whatever you have done from a POC show and tell standpoint may not be the condition which will be applicable in your production. So don't assume. So you build your test scripts in such a way, model give you some sort of a matrices or some sort of a instrumentation indicator where you can see the thought process, what you have in your head before building the model is actually true or not. Self-correcting is a secondary thing, how you can self-correct it. I'm talking about how you can address certain biases. It will be there. End of the day, it will be there. I don't think you can completely eliminate something out of the biases. End of the day, these are built by human. We are very biased people.
Great response, Gaurav. So, we are running out of really time, and I'm really sorry because we are taking, a bit more time for the Q&A. So I'll just wrap up here, and I will take the last question, because we have spent some time understanding the career focus. What should be the career focus? So I think there were some conflicting comments. I will not blame them. There, some wanted to focus on the business, some wanted to focus on the technology. That's okay. But I'm yet to hear from Ratnakar. So Ratnakar, the last question of this session for you. So if a student want to pursue his or her career in the field of data and analytics, so what all sort of skills and knowledge does he or she need to work on, which companies are looking in an ideal candidate? So I don't think I have heard your comment or your take on this. So, if you'd like to just have some idea for our students, the people who are pursuing MBA or PGDMs, and if they just want to jump into the world of data and analytics, so what should be the learning, as in terms of the skills or knowledge?
Yeah. So I know, we're already over time, so I'll just briefly answer that and then see if there's any follow-up question on it, right? So I think first and the foremost is the coding skills are definitely a must-have, right? So as you're starting your career, and when I say coding skills, I mean particularly two different languages that you should be very, very good at. One is Python, the other one is SQL, right? Because Python is what we typically use in the industry for building the ML models and the deep learning models and so on and so forth. And SQL is more for the data fetching and then data wrangling or the data munging, whatever you want to call that, right? So those are a couple of things that is more like a hygiene factor that we're looking at. More importantly, I mean, we're not necessarily looking for people who are coming pre-trained with the ML skills, right? So I mean, that is something that we can definitely train you on, but it's more about the structured problem solving and whether you have the critical thinking skills, right? Can you really apply that? Can you show me that if I give you a vague problem, you can break it down to the bite-sized pieces and then figure out how you can apply your analytical structure to take that problem forward, and then take a business problem and convert that into an analytical problem, right? The third aspect is, I mean, as I was mentioning in my previous comments, is about the storytelling and the presentation skills, right? Because a lot of people are very good at the number crunching, building the models, but if you're not able to tell a story, if you're not able to answer the so what question, what do I do with this ML and the deep learning model that you built, your job is not done, right? So we are looking at those three skills. I mean, like I said, SQL, Python as a hygiene factor, analytical structured thought process as a must-have, and then storytelling and the presentation skills.
Great. So anyone else want to add any other skills or knowledge if you think that it is critical, maybe here?
Yeah, I think
sorry, go ahead.
Yes. Ritesh, you can go ahead, and then Satyajit can follow.
Yes, I think Ratnakar rightly captured. I also feel that while this is an evolving field and seems to be by some magazine called the sexiest job on the planet right now, don't kind of dwell towards it because the whole world is doing it, right? Sometimes things are meant for everybody, right? So I mean, you should be able to get a grasp of things saying that, am I interested in solving complex problems? Do I like looking at big data set all the time? My skill could be lying elsewhere, but I'm doing it because everybody else is doing. So, so be sure of that. And then my suggestion is, when you're learning in your early start of your career, if you're picking up an option or a career in analytics, do not join analytics, or do not join an organization which is setting up analytics, right? Because the expectation is that you bring something to the table and you deliver, right? I would say join an existing setup, learn the ropes, spend 2 to 3 years learning newer things, see if you're meant for it or not. Because early in your career, you can afford to make mistakes, you can change trajectories. But once you like that and you move forward, then you will realize and appreciate the strengths that you're building up by working in organizations and learning the ropes and then adding value to any other organization you join in your career. So yeah, those are my 2 cents on how you should approach and whether you should pick up this as a career option or not.
Satyajit, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I think one part is you need to have a design thinking hat as well. That is pretty much expected out of people who are coming in, because you are in a way designing solutions, and Deepak's earlier initial part where you are building custom solutions and data, each organization, each asset, each set of customers bringing their own data. So a model which runs elsewhere will not run in a different setup. So you need to see that you are wearing a solution hat, and for that you need to have your design thinking skills very sharp. And I don't know whether you all offer as a part of electives or courses a component of design thinking, but that needs to be taken forward. If not, then you need to look at that, because product management would be another area that is very, very critical. So design thinking and product management is important from your side. And whichever sector you like, you love analytics, that's taken because you are attending this program. But whichever industry you like, whether it is banking, whether it's finance, whether insurance, whether it is telco, whether it, please develop a very deep appreciation about the value chain and the ecosystem. We generally, I see people coming up and having a very, very, 36,000 feet, or even go forward, 40,000 feet, 60,000 feet. Those views are fine, but analytics brings you to the ground. So when it is in the ground, you need to have a very, very deeper appreciation of the components of the systems and subsystems in place. So please build up that. If you are not having it, when you are joining, like Deepak said, you should join some of the buy side of the setup. You should be able to build your perspective behind it and see elements of it, because sooner or later you will be asked to identify analytics use case. Like Ritesh was asked, you need to identify that. Because your ability or relevance in this space will be important in either identifying use cases or in improving the algorithms that are there already built up and deliver value. If you are not doing these two things, then your relevance as a data scientist or analytics or a business analyst or whatever name the organization faces, your relevance will decline.
Yes, Ritesh, you want to add something?
Yeah, so as Ratnakar and Deepak said, somebody who wants to aspire to be a data scientist has to fall in love with programming for sure. Okay, SQL and Python, or R, whichever language you want to pick between R and Python. Second is, I would suggest invest a lot of time in reading stuff online about the industry, about new techniques that have come in the market. Okay, for example, I still remember in 2014 when I started, people used to use logistic regression or random forest. Now gone are those days when people use these techniques, right? So and also understand which technique works where. It is not like that every technique would work on every other data set. So invest a lot of time in reading. There are a lot of good websites like Towards Data Science, Kaggle, or Analytics Vidya, where people discuss real-time problems as well. So my suggestion would be read a lot about this, because this is a very, very fast-paced industry, which we were using 2 years back is actually no more used as of now, right?
Yes. So this industry is actually every day evolution. Yeah, evolution is happening. Yes, yeah. It is. Yeah. So before we close up, so Vinamra and Gaurav, if you want to add anything, or we are good to go.
I think it is almost mostly discovered. I'll say don't carry away. There is nothing sexy about a data engineer or a data scientist. I put myself as a data engineer, look at my face, I don't look sexy. There are people on the panel who are data scientists, look at their faces, they don't look sexy.
It's the job.
Yeah. So it has looking at same data multiple times. So I think the point what I'm trying to make here is be sure before you end up into this. Don't get carried away because some Mr. Malhotra's son or daughter has done. That is something that's how we became engineer. Like, that was true in our age, which was 25 years back, because, I became engineer because my neighbor's kid became engineer. I think you kids are much smarter. Make your choices wisely. If this is something you are passionate about, jump into this field. Don't get carried away what others are doing. So that's my only advice.
Great. Yes, Vinamra, you want to make some closing remarks maybe for today's session?
No, not really a lot to add there, but just saying that analytics is a horizontal and not a vertical deep expertise. Until you swim in the water, the company would not know how banking domain experience is like, or a media experience is like. I have worked for 10 years with banking. I had no clue about media when I entered, right? I'm just saying, as young folks in the college, you would never be on the same pedestal as the interviewer on the other side, coming from that domain. To give you an example, I interned in a commodity exchange working in market risk, and the person who was interviewing next to me was an expert in credit risk. So I dared not say anything about credit risk. I just answered what I knew about market risk, right? If I would answer anything about credit risk, he would not have hired me, right? At American, because that's for sure. He also told me of me. So, so that's what I'm trying to say. Essentially, whatever internship experience you gain, that is your business understanding. That's the best you would go with. But everything else, what Ratnakar mentioned, is what you should come prepared with the interview. There's nothing else you can do about those interviews. And analytics is vertical, industry agnostic. Think it that fashion, and that's where you will appreciate also the product management analytics. Technology roles are industry agnostic, so you can swim through industries and learn more, right, on the job.
So great discussion, and thanks to everyone, all the panelists, and for your time and taking some time out of your busy schedule on a Saturday. So